Order. We'll have a prayer by Senator Nicolas.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we just recently got through the Thanksgiving season, and we have so much to be thankful for. We're thankful for the gift of your Son that we'll be celebrating soon, later on this month. We're thankful for all of us being able to be here today and healthy and strong and able to do your work in the service of our people. We thank you for the blessings of our families. We thank you for the memories of friends who've left us. And we thank you for always being generous in your spirit to give us the courage and the wisdom we need to do the work that you want us to do. And Lord, we ask that you bless this house and bless everybody here and bless the people of Guam as we strive to continue to do your work. In Jesus' name, amen.
Senator Tomata.
Inifresi. Gininimas tatkilo gihinasoko. Imas tatkilom gikurasonho. Zanimas figo naninya sinyaho. Uofresid maisazo. Parabayu protehi. Zanhu defendi. Ihinengi. Ikultura. Ilengwahi. Iairi. Ihanom. Zanitano Zamoro. Ni irenshaku diretso genazu stata. Esti huwa fitma gihilu I Biblia. Zani banderaho I banderangwahan.
Madam Clerk, please take roll.
Senator Senator Mccready. Here. Senator Morrison. Present. Senator William Barnes. Senator Bishop. Here. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Nicolas. Present. Speaker Wambat. Yashida. Mr. Speaker, there is a quorum.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon. I move that we excuse our colleagues that are not present for this session.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you. I move that we approve the legislative journal dated November 18, 2014, subject to correction.
Any objection? Hearing none.
And there are communications and petitions, Mr. Speaker. I move that they be appended to today's session journal,
Without objection.
as well as messages from Imagala and Guahan. I move that these messages be appended to today's session journal.
Without objection.
And I also move for the same relative to reports from standing committees.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, there are no reports of select committees, so moving along, I move that bill numbers 424-32 COR through bill number 435-32 COR, as well as resolution numbers 509-32 COR through resolution numbers 512-32 COR, as well as certificate number 211-32 COR through certificate numbers 214-32 COR, all be given its first reading.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under motions, we are called into this, you called us into this special session.
It's not special, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you called us into this, well, the request was for a special session, but you certainly don't have the authority to call special sessions. We're the legislative branch of government, so nonetheless, you called us into this session on the basis of hearing a bill that was just introduced this morning by Senator Michael F. Nicolas. It's bill number 435-32 COR, and it's an act to stop salary increases for elected officials and cabinet members by repealing Public Law 32-208, and the senator requests that you also waive the public hearing requirement, and you responded in the affirmative. And after receiving your response certifying that this bill meets one of the requirements set forth in subsection 2103A of Title II GCA, and the requirement for a public hearing is waived. And so I move that this bill 435-32 be placed in the second reading file.
Thank you very much, and I also want to make it clear that this whole issue of the competitive wage was discussed in a public hearing in January and February. We've had several discussions on it with the first passage of the Competitive Wage Act, the decision at that point to not include the elected officials, and then in the special session we also addressed this issue. So this whole issue has had input and public input. So thank you very much. So we're in. My letter is on the record and is hereby appended to today's journal as to have this bill considered today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so there's no legislative concurrence, nothing on the consent calendar, so we can proceed to the second reading file. Thank you.
Can we get you to make the motion on the standard motion to adopt resolutions and certificates that there were several that I signed already, so we'll just consider them to be during this session.
So move, Mr. Speaker. To clarify, I move that any resolutions or certificates that introduced for the duration of this legislative session be adopted, and that all senators be co-sponsors, and that the clerk and the legal counsel work together with the sponsors to finalize these condolence or commendatory certificates or resolutions, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. We're now down to second reading. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to place Bill number 435-32 on the third reading file and to be afforded an opportunity to speak on the measure.
Hearing no objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is an evolution of various things that have taken place over the last 12 months. Again, as you properly referenced earlier in your statement, we did have hearings with respect to the Competitive Wage Act back in January. These hearings that we had back in January and the ultimate piece of legislation that came out of that was a passage of a salary increase measure that was limited to the rank and file employees only. And we did not give out increases to elected officials or appointed officials at that time, with the exception of the mayors who were given the increase that was proposed. The public hearings that took place at that time resulted in that outcome. And from that time until the passage of Bill 18S that was transmitted to the legislature on November 21st, there were no subsequent hearings that brought to light any new or additional information that would warrant from the public the idea that what happened in January should be followed through with and afforded to the elected officials and the appointed officials. On November 21st, Bill 18S was transmitted by the acting governor, Ray Tenorio. And in his transmittal letter, he states, and I'll read it because it's relevant to what we're talking about here, which is a repeal of the ultimate passage of that bill into law. He wrote at the time that the Calvo administration is grateful that the legislature recognizes the good work of all our government employees, including the cabinet members. Every employee counts. It is entirely because of the focused and collective efforts of each employee that the government's finances are now being managed properly. This has allowed us to make improvements and start modernizing public schools and adding another high school to Guam's DOE inventory. More medical services are available, affordable homes are being built, and tax refunds have been paid. There is no question that our government employees have contributed and performed extraordinarily. By passing Bill 18-S, we tell these employees that our dedication and efforts are deserving of recognition and reward. Moving forward, as we head into new terms of office, Governor Calvo and I are hopeful and optimistic that politics can be set aside so the spirit of bipartisan collaboration will continue. We must be ever mindful that public office is a public trust and that we have a common obligation to serve Guam and its people. Thank you and have a happy Thanksgiving. Signed, Ray Tenorio, Acting Governor of Guam. Mr. Speaker, this letter transmitted by the acting governor with respect to Bill 18-S that resulted in Public Law 32-208, which my bill 435-32 is now seeking to repeal, the content of this letter is not to be disputed. A lot of things have taken place over the years that have been of benefit to our community. But I proffer, Mr. Speaker, that is business as usual. That is the job that we were assigned, whether as elected officials or appointed officials. If our public school system needs a new school, it's our job to add one to its inventory. It's our job to make sure more medical services are available. It's our job to make sure that affordable homes are being built. It's our job, most especially, to make sure that tax refunds have been paid. Now, of course, undoubtedly, every government of Guam employee, to include the elected and appointed officials, contributed to those things taking place. But I proffer that for the leadership especially, Mr. Speaker, for the leadership especially, we need to understand that there is a fine line between doing the work that we're supposed to be doing and going above and beyond the call of duty. And nothing in this letter, in my opinion, warrants salary increases for the elected and the appointed officials. That, Mr. Speaker, all those things in this letter is business as usual. However, the acting governor states that these contributions were performed extraordinarily. And that, I guess, is where we have to come to terms with what exactly it is that our jobs are here as elected and appointed officials, and at what point can we, in clear conscience, go to the people of Guam who are our bosses and say to them, we've done an extraordinary job, we would like to move forward and increase for ourselves. There is no dispute, Mr. Speaker, that the finances of the government are in better shape, and that's not just due to any one branch of government, but a collective effort by this entire government, both elected and appointed, to try and make sure that we're managing the money well. We must continue to do that, and in that spirit, Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind the body that these raises that were being proffered back in January were estimated to cost approximately $2 million. Now, if we're going to pay out these raises to elected and appointed officials over the next 12 months and retroactively pay those raises all the way back to January as was proposed and passed into law, we're talking about spending $4 million, if the $2 million projection was correct back in January, $4 million for pay increases for the elected and the appointed officials. And while all of us work hard, we need to be mindful of the fact that in a leadership position, our job is to make sure the money is going to the needs of the community. And there are so many needs that can be addressed with $4 million. You know, one of the needs that quickly stand out in my mind, Mr. Speaker, is a video that I saw on Facebook about maybe a couple months ago of the Umatic River that was overflowing and flooding out homes, and it looked like a flash flood. This $4 million can go a long way towards dredging out that river and bringing a greater sense of safety and stability to the people of Umatic. It could also go a long way towards reinforcing the cemetery area that's slowly slipping into the sea. Those are concerns that the people of Umatic have been bringing up to us for many, many, many months, and it has not improved to this very day. We have, throughout the course of this term, Mr. Speaker, heard and read and observed and been right there in the middle of the growing and unresolved problem that is our mass transit system. And while there is a step towards progress with permanent leadership that's finally been in place with the new general manager up there, surely $4 million can go a long way, because that represents a doubling of the mass transit budget. We can double the services to our ridership. We can double the services to our disabled community. We can mobilize our workforce, mobilize our economy with this $4 million injection. That is actually more than double of what the current mass transit budget is, which is currently inadequate. I mean, we've understood that. And the question has always been, where are we going to get the money? And all these things, Mr. Speaker, always come back to the question of where are we going to get the money? Only for us to turn around and find the money for not only raises going forward, but raises retroactive? We could use this money, Mr. Speaker, to pay what we still owe. We have GMH employees that never got a merit bonus when everyone else did. DOE, UOG, and GCC only got paid the last 3 years when others in the government got paid all the way back to 1991. We have outstanding parity issues with respect to that, Mr. Speaker. How can we pay ourselves more for doing the job we were supposed to do when those who should have been compensated equally to everybody else are still sitting back saying, what about me? Law enforcement, I've recently gotten reports, is said to have not received the 40% increase as it should be factored into their overtime. Apparently, from what I'm hearing, the overtime that we paid did not include that 40% adjustment. And they are still pending uncompensated hours. Just this morning, Mr. Speaker, we had a discussion, I like to use the word animated because it's the most politically correct. We had a very animated discussion about our retirement system that currently has certain members within that system in a crisis, because the amount of money that they've been able to accumulate for their retirement is not enough for them to retire properly. That's for new employees as well as those who've converted from the old plan. And surely one of the biggest challenges we have towards reconciling that is the unfunded liability of $1 billion that we could still pay down with this $4 million. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, but surely these drops are supposed to be going into those buckets. I was just at the vigil this Sunday night. We were there together for the 3 ladies who were taken from us too soon in the tragic hit-and-run accident up in Jigo. And you saw and I saw that accident site, Mr. Speaker, was pitch black. There wasn't a street light on the entire strip. And I can't help but wonder, if there were street lights there, could that have been averted? How many other roads are so dangerous because they're not properly lit? We hear it from our mayors all the time. They would like more of a budget for streetlights for their respective villages. $4 million, Mr. Speaker, could save lives if it bought streetlights. It could avert crimes, burglaries. When I was thinking about this session, Mr. Speaker, and by the way, I'm very thankful that you called it. You didn't have to, but you did, and I'm grateful. I was reflecting on some of the other stuff that we've had over the course of the last several months. Our crime lab that we saw pictures of that houses our evidence that's necessary for us to prosecute criminals is falling apart. Leaky roofs, broken equipment. We've heard from the AG's office months ago, and I'm sure they would still have the same request, that they have a need for hiring more victims advocates. We've heard from victims over the course of this term, Mr. Speaker. And if they had more victims advocates, they'd be able to work more closely with these victims to make sure they're being communicated with and informed. I'm sure the ones there in the agency are already doing as best they can, but they need more. We've heard from the public auditor about how she's having a very difficult time retaining her staff. Very difficult time retaining her staff. And she would like for her office to be able to compensate her staff at a level that's competitive with the private sector, because she keeps losing these finance and accounting professionals to the private sector that's just able to pay them more. And then we have the legacy issues that just are still staring us in the face. We have not broken ground on Simon Sanchez. GW still has so many repairs that need to be made. I'm hearing that Teton High School, the new high school, needs collateral equipment. And all of us in the community are waiting to find out when can we actually buy security cameras for our schools. But one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that is most glaring to all of us, public sector, private sector, anybody who drives a car or rides in one, is a need for us to fix our village roads. We were just at a town hall meeting for the people of Inarahan who spoke to us about Route 4 and how the mantra has been there's not enough money to fix Route 4. It's a $4 million project. Just so happens to be the exact same amount that we can project these raises are going to cost going forward, including the retroactive payment. $4 million, Route 4. We can fix the road, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, just referencing the Village Streets Master Plan, the village of Agana Heights has $23 million in road repairs that it needs. Agate has $41 million in road repairs. Asan has $10 million in road repairs. Barragada, $16 million in road repairs. Chalampago Ordat, $60 million in road repairs. Dedido, $101 million in road repairs. Hagatnya, $4 million in road repairs. We can fix all of Hagatnya with just 1 year's worth plus retro of these increases. In Arahan, $20.95 million. That's inclusive of the $4 million for Route 4. Manilao, $103 million in road construction projects. Maritzo, $27 million. Mongmong Totumaiti, $34 million. Piti, $16 million. Santa Rita, $21 million. Sinahanya, $13 million. Talafofo, $57 million. Tamuning, $46 million. Humatak, $13 million. Jigu, $104 million. Zotnya, $29 million. These are village roads, Mr. Speaker, which means we can't get federal funding for them. They're not routed roads. Or they're routed roads that have outstanding issues that prevent federal funding from being able to be spent on these projects. This Village Streets Master Plan, Mr. Speaker, was signed off by every single mayor when it was drafted in 2009. Now, I'm hopeful that some of these projects have already gotten taken care of, but certainly not all of them. We've all driven on these roads, Mr. Speaker. All of our people drive on these roads. And how can we give out raises to elected and appointed officials when they drive on that road every day and the bumps just remind them that dollars went someplace else? I know $4 million in the grand scheme of all the projects doesn't sound like a lot of money, but these projects are actually broken down by individual streets. We can improve the lives of people by fixing their individual street. And when you actually break out the individual streets, all of a sudden it doesn't look so impossible. And you can definitely see how $4 million can be stretched. These projects cost $104,000, $46,000, $461,000, $939,000, $1 million, $46,000. Lots of little projects can get fit into $4 million. Now, in some of my on-the-side conversations about these increases, I've been told, well, just donate your increase now. You don't want your increase, just go donate it. That's all well and good. I have no problem with that. But Mr. Speaker, if we can pull all these increases together, we can make substantial improvements to our community. This $4 million, by the way, Mr. Speaker, can renovate the labor and delivery ward instead of us having to go out and borrow money to do that. Now, one of the things that I've learned in one term serving in the legislature is that there's always competing interests and there's just never enough money to go around. And if that is the case, then we need to really reconcile the idea of whether or not all these competing interests that I mentioned, and there's so many more, and I didn't mean to leave anybody out, there's just so many more. But can we really reconcile the fact that all of these things can wait because we have a recruiting and retention problem in our cabinet or in our elected offices? We didn't have any trouble finding people to run for office, Mr. Speaker, and we have no trouble finding somebody to be a director or a deputy director. I can't think of a single agency that has a director or deputy director slot unfilled because nobody wants the job. Now, I'm not saying we want to put just anybody in there, but that's equally also something that we need to really ask ourselves. Are the current salaries only hiring people that are just bodies to fill the seat? Absolutely not. We have a lot of very good professionals in our cabinet. And they all took on the job of the current pay. Now, if we have a problem getting people to run for office, if we have a problem getting people to take on a director or a deputy director position, if nobody wants the job because it's not worth it, because the pay and the compensation is just not there, then absolutely we can weigh that competing interest with all these other competing interests. But Mr. Speaker, there is no crisis. There is no crisis. In the meantime, 3 girls died up in Jigo because there's no street light. Well, maybe it wasn't the reason, but it probably could have prevented it. We'll never know. The people of Inarajan have made it very clear. They even asked us, what are we waiting for? Someone to die down there before we go down and fix the road? Now, I know that it's not easy having to repeal something that we just passed, to vote a different way from how we voted previously. I know it's asking a lot. Some of the comments I get is, good luck, But I really believe, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes all we have to do is create the opportunity for everybody to be surprised and allow divinity to insert itself and make that surprise manifest. So does 435-32 pass? I don't know. Does it get signed? I don't know. But should we create the opportunity, create that opening and allow divinity to insert itself and take its course? Absolutely. And so I humbly and respectfully ask my colleagues, in light of the considerations that I've brought forth, to reconsider the actions that were taken on November 21st, to reconsider the priorities, and to make a very difficult, but I would say necessary, and I would say dignified decision, and pass Bill 435-32, and communicate very clearly to our constituency, the people of Guam, that while we may not always get it right all the time, we will always strive to make it right when it becomes very clear that we must. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Mccready? Anybody after Senator Mccready?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the retiring speaker as well. When you ask yourself the question of is this government moving in the right direction? Is this administration responsible? And the retiring speaker said it himself. Not one man can do this by himself. He needs a cabinet. He needs his directors. He needs the people around him to make him a better governor, to make us better legislators. Every one of those directors out there, every one of the cabinet members out there are at our beck and call when we call them. When we have public hearings, they're here to testify, usually in support of our measures, our initiatives. I was one of the individuals who voted yes on November 21st because I believe they deserve their compensation. I believe that we lose a lot of our good people in this government because of that fact. We cannot just turn our backs on people because they're cabinet members. That's not right. They have families. They have special qualities about what they do. Some of them more than us. They work hard. Their jobs are thankless, just like ours. They take the heat, just like us. But then you got this branch of government, Mr. Speaker, who is not perfect. Neither is the administration. No one's perfect. We understand that. But you remember right here in this session hall, almost 2 years ago, myself and Mike Limtiaco introduced Bill 3032, which was to repeal the raises of the senators from 2010. And the biggest opposition was Senator Nicolas. I mean, let's be honest. Are we going to repeal the raises that we feel are necessary? Because if we're going to repeal raises, well, let's repeal raises. Let's not pick and choose. Let's repeal the raises across the board. And I fought tooth and nail for 2 years to repeal the raises of this branch of government, the Senate, and failed every time. You win some, you lose some in here. And I lost every time. And I considered myself losing on November 21st when I voted yes to agree to a pay raise for this branch of government. Not because we're not worth it or the people in this branch does not work hard. There's some very good, hard-working people in here, Democrats and Republicans. And like I always said, when we get it right, when we work together, we're almost unstoppable. We're not broken. But some of the things that the retiring speaker had just said was the reason why I wanted to repeal that raise of 2010. For the same reasons. For the same reasons. Whether it's $5,000 or $25,000. It's for the same reasons that he had just spoke about. But when we're talking about the Senate, we're not talking about the entire branch of government and these hardworking men and women outside here. We're talking about the Senate. We're not talking about the directors, the cabinet members. This is a big boy sport. You gotta be tough sometimes. You gotta take the heat. You gotta make tough decisions. You gotta be spot on when you make those decisions. But you can't turn your back on people. And you can't curl up and all of a sudden become soft. When you fight for the people of our community, when you fight for the constituents, those constituents may be from a different party and a different branch of government, but you have to continue to fight for the people, no matter who they are, no matter who they work for, no matter if they're government, private sector. You got to continue to fight for what's right. And that's the hardworking people of this island. And he said it himself. The government is on track. And it's not because of one man. That's because there's a bunch of cabinet members that work hard to make this governor look good. And if the last election is a reflection, then they have done their jobs. But, you know, you got to ask yourself, where does it end? Where does this branch of government say that enough is enough? Where? I mean, if this bill fails, are we going to go into special session tomorrow? I imagine that's possible. Mr. Speaker, I continue to believe that this bill 435-32 may have some merit. In my eyes, it may have some merit. But I don't think it's complete. It's not a complete repeal. And if you're going to be honest with yourself, if you're going to be complete, and if you're going to be a concerned lawmaker whose number one priority are street lights and the people, and not putting the blame on who's responsible for what, when, why, and where, then let's be complete. So I'm going to proffer my amendment on line 1, page 1. Now, for the record, this is the third time in my term that I have proffered this type of amendment. Section 1 of Public Law 32-208 is hereby amended to read. Section 1 of Public Law 32-136 is hereby repealed and reenacted to read. Section 1, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, rule, regulation, policy, or procedure, the salaries of Imagalahan Guahan, Segundo na Magalahan Guahan, and the Attorney General of Guam shall be set to the respective salary rates pursuant to the Competitive Wage Act of 2014, which was transmitted and received by Legislature in Guahan on January 15, 2014. The appropriations from FY
Senator
2000.
Mccready, I hate to interrupt, but I think some of the members and the staff here, yes, please.
I'll pass it out.
We'll take a short
recess.
recess. The legislature's back in session. The amendment by Senator Mccready has been distributed to all the members. You should all have it on your desk. Senator Mccready.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment shall read, Section 1, Public Law 32-136 is hereby repealed and reenacted to read, Section 1, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, regulation, policy, or procedure, the salaries of Ibagalahin, Guahan, Isagundana, Magalahin, Guahan, and the Attorney General of Guam shall be set at their respective salary rates pursuant to the Competitive Wage Act of 2014, which was transmitted and received by Ili Legislature in Guahan on January 15, 2014. The appropriations from FY 2015 are hereby authorized for the payments of salaries of the positions identified in this section. The salaries of the Public Auditor of Guam and the staff of the Office of Public Accountability shall be set pursuant to 1907, Chapter 19, Title 1 of Guam Code annotated. Nothing in this section shall repeal or negate the provisions contained in Public Law 32-166. The compensation for senators of Legislature in Guahan shall be paid in 26 equal installments of $55,307. Which would be approximately a $5,000 decrease in our current pay. The compensation of the Speaker of Legislature in Guahan shall be paid in 26 equal installments at the rate per annum of $62,500. Thank you.
Okay. On the Mccready Amendment.
Could I just say one thing? I would like to publicly state that this section at the lower third of this amendment would reflect taking away the pay raise that the legislature gave themselves in 2010. So, as I stated earlier, this amendment right here, the $55,307 would take us back from the $60,000 we make a year now, back to the previous raise compensation of 2010. So we would no longer be 50% of the judge's salary, but that has been repealed already by Senator Limtiaco. So this would take us back.
All right. The first hand I saw go up was Senator Nicolas. Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Duenas. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment that's being proposed is completely different from the bill that was introduced for this session. The bill that was introduced for this session was a repeal of Public Law 32-208, and this amendment that's being proposed is a complete rewriting of the entire bill to include its title and its intent. This proposal from Senator Mccready does not stop the raises to the governor, lieutenant governor, and the cabinet. He's still giving it to all of them, and he's just now targeting senators. And if we want to go in and decrease senator salaries in exchange for getting the vote to repeal everything, fine, we'll do that. But this amendment isn't even germane to the bill, Mr. Speaker. It's a complete rewrite. It's a substitute version. So unless the body votes to adopt the substitute version of the bill that's on the floor before the body, we are technically dealing with something that's completely ingermane because it doesn't repeal the raises. It just targets senators. And while it's a cool political tactic, fun to watch, it's disingenuous, as has been this entire process that Senator Mccready has been a part of. So I'd like to ask for a ruling from the chair on whether or not this amendment is even germane, and can we please get back to the business of repealing these raises?
Thank you. I'll take a short recess. After consultation with legal counsel and parliamentarian, it is the decision of the chair that the amendment is germane to the bill as it relates to addressing 32-208, whether or not it's the entire bill or part of the bill.
Very well, Mr. Speaker. So may I speak to the amendment?
Please.
Mr. Speaker, I have never once voted to increase my salary. When I ran for senator in 2012, the salary was what it was. It was always transparent. The people always knew. And when I ran for senator, I made it very clear that I'm going to work very hard to earn my pay. That's part of the reason why I'm here today, Mr. Speaker, doing something very, very difficult. Very difficult. Because it's a commitment I made to the people. And Bill 435-32 as introduced is intended to repeal all of the raises and free up to $2 million a year. That all these raises were going to go out and into the pockets of elected and appointed officials. Free up $2 million going forward, free up a total of approximately $4 million as of now because of the retro clause in the bill, and have that money go to priorities. This amendment from Senator Mccready now is going to keep all the raises for the governor, keep all the raises for the cabinet, and just cut senators. Yeah, we can go split hairs on, oh, I'm doing this because, whatever. But Mr. Speaker, instead of saving $2 million a year, we're going to be spending 1.7 and only saving $300-some thousand. Senator Mccready is so committed with this amendment to give raises to the governor and the lieutenant governor. So committed to giving raises to the cabinet members. In spite of all the facts that I stated earlier about all these other priorities that we can fund. I'm not saying people don't deserve it, Mr. Speaker. What I'm saying is that we have other priorities. Surely, as difficult as this whole measure is for me to introduce, I'm trying very hard to earn my pay as well. But that's beyond the point. The issue, Mr. Speaker, is should we not include this in January, not say a single thing throughout the entire campaign. This was never Senator Mccready's platform. This wasn't the governor's platform. Nobody said a single word about these raises, Mr. Speaker. Not a single word. And they allowed our people to go into the voting booth and vote for them without saying a single word. And right after you secured the vote from the people, you organize a mechanism by which to give out raises without having a public hearing? If this was a parliamentary system, Mr. Speaker, I'd be calling for snap elections. And we would clear out this House because the people would go to the polls and vote knowing what they know now. Now, I don't want to have to get into any of that, Mr. Speaker. I'm just asking us to do the right thing.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. We're not talking about giving ourselves raises. We're talking about decreasing our salary. So I don't think what he's talking about is something totally different from what my amendment is proffered. So I don't. He's kind of confusing.
I'll allow him to continue. Finish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the amendment now that's being proffered by Senator Mccready is to basically let the governor keep his raise, let the lieutenant governor keep his raise, let all the cabinet members keep their raises, and only take it away from senators. So Mr. Speaker, I really need to ask the question why we constantly target senators and want to reduce senatorial pay, but we don't think that the governor's pay should be cut or the cabinet member's pay should be cut. What is the purpose for cutting the senator's pay? Is it to make a political point, or is it to save the government money? And if it's to save the government money, then surely all these raises should be repealed. So I'd like to proffer a question to the author. Is his intent to make a political point, or is his intent to actually save the people of Guam money and fund these priorities, if the author will so yield? I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker?
Did you wish to yield to his question? Are you trying to make a political statement, or are you trying to save some money to go through to these priorities? It's not yielding. Please continue.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker?
He hasn't indicated that he's yielding. Please continue.
So the author refuses to yield to the question.
Yes.
So if the issue is not then to save the people of Guam money, or if the issue is not to fund these priorities but to make a political point, then I really need to stand in opposition to this amendment, Mr. Speaker, because that's not what we're here for. You know, we talk about doing the hard work, whether you're in the executive branch, the legislative branch, whether you're a cabinet member. This is part of the hard work, Mr. Speaker. It's not about trying to figure out how we can put something out there that's going to get us just enough attention. It's about making the hard stand and repealing raises, not just for senators, but for the governor and for the cabinet members to fund these priorities. That's what the bill was introduced for. That's what I asked for the session for. That's what called us into this House. So I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment. And strike all of Section 1 and to change the title where it says Section 1 of Public Law 32-136 is hereby repealed and reenacted to read. Strike the numbers 32-136 and replace it with 32-208 and strike and reenacted to read. So basically the amendment will now say Section 1 of Public Law, and strike the word Section 1 of. So now the amendment reads Public Law 32-208 is hereby repealed, which is the exact same language as my original bill. So my amendment to the amendment is to strike Section 1, strike Section 1 of, strike 136 in replace of 208, and strike and reenact it to read, and have it clearly say, Public Law 32-208 is hereby repealed. Let's get through voting on whether or not we're going to repeal this law, Mr. Speaker. Let's not confuse the issue.
An objection.
Mr. Speaker, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Can you tell us what we're voting on, please?
The amendment to the amendment. Yes. We go back to the original amendment. It is on the record. Hold on a second. Mr. Majority Leader, what was your...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to a point of order, believing that the amendment being offered by Senator Nicolas is an amendment that is not in order simply because it substantially changes the face of the amendment that's being offered by Senator Mccready. Senator Mccready is offering to leave everything with the exception of the senator's salaries. And what Senator Nicolas is attempting to do, as we know, is reverting back to the original bill. And so I rise to a point of order saying that if this amendment is accepted, then it would prevent senators from having discussion on the amendment that Senator Mccready is offering. And so I submit to you that this, and I could look it up in the Mason's manual if I could find it, but I believe that this amendment, since it substantially changes the mover's intent, then I believe that it's an out-of-order amendment. Unlike what Senator Mccready is trying to do with Senator Nicolas's main bill, it's still consistent with the spirit of what we're attempting to do here. So I rise to that point of order.
On the point of order, the chair will rule that this is out of order. On the Mccready Amendment, Senator, who else wants to speak on the Mccready Amendment? We're back to the Mccready Amendment. Yes.
Just to close, I still have the floor, Mr. Speaker. So just to make it very clear, with that ruling now, and with this amendment, we are going to be voting on an amendment that doesn't roll back all the raises. It just rolls it back for senators. And I'm fine. We'll roll back for senators. Cool. Let's roll it back for everybody. So I'm asking everybody to vote no on this amendment so we can get back to the business of rolling back all the raises that were given out and make good on our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Duenas, and then Mr. Majority Leader, did you wish to be heard? Senator Duenas.
Maybe after this, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to rise in support of the amendment. Before I go forward with the reason, I would like to return the favor of asking the author of the bill if he would yield to a question. And that question would be the repeal of salary increases for elected officials. Was that his intent in drafting the bill?
Senator Nicolas.
The bill reads, as I introduced, an act to stop salary increases for elected officials and cabinet members by repealing Public Law 32-208.
All elected officials.
An act to stop salary increases for elected officials and cabinet members by repealing Public Law 32-208. And it's a one-sentence bill, Mr. Speaker. It just says Public Law 32-208 is hereby repealed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you,
Senator.
Thank you, Senator. And therein lies just one of 3 points I will make. All elected officials includes mayors. You may have, just right off the bat, a conflict even the way the bill was drafted. Because if you say, repeal the salary increases for elected officials, and then reference Public Law 32-208, if I'm correct, that's not all elected officials.
I understand. We are currently on the Mccready Amendment.
I understand.
You can come back to this point if the Mccready Amendment does not pass.
It supported the reason why I had, so thank you. Thank you for allowing me the latitude of drawing now to my main point about the amendment. Mr. Speaker, the good retiring senator from Talafofo stood to tell and basically say about this amendment that my good colleague, Senator Mccready, was essentially disingenuous and pulling a political stunt. He also made the point, Mr. Speaker, that he never voted for an increase for himself, which is true. It was the salary when he came in the last legislature. But Mr. Speaker, I think it's been on the record, and I know at least my colleagues can support me, that when a similar measure that I introduced, and he was running for senator that next election for the 32nd, along with other colleagues, it said, a measure to repeal senatorial salaries known as bucks for buses was a campaign gimmick. That's on the record. And I know it can be supported by many people who are at Simon Sanchez and other public forums to which this very senator who now calls out my colleague for making a decision to introduce an amendment to where this body can control its destiny. And Mr. Speaker, I have to say, he obviously backed up the fact that he believed at the time when he was campaigning, as he's now called for, saying what has happened in terms of what has transpired with the raises. Obviously, his actions supported it. Because, Mr. Speaker, when my good colleague, two colleagues, Senator Limtiaco and Senator Mccready, moved on other motions and bills to do the same thing, the good senator from Talafopo was the loudest critic going against...
Let's just state it on this, please. Let's just, on the amendment, please.
Yes, and it is. It's exactly what the amendment is attempting to do. And is exactly in response to the dialogue and the testimony on the floor here from the retiring speaker from Talafopo, Mr. Speaker. I'm only addressing those issues which I wasn't going to rise and speak on this until I listened to that presentation. So I had to rise and correct for the record on this floor a misrepresentation. I will close soon, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to make sure that I got those points out so that I could address what was spoken to. And thank you for giving me that opportunity. So now, Mr. Speaker, in closing, the opportunity is before us. Another opportunity has been presented to lead by example, to do it within this House. And I will also close by explaining, which I don't think I have to, but I will, why my vote was for the bill as proffered that became public law, that is now being attempted to be repealed. Because you know, Mr. Speaker, as it's known, I'm not returning to this hall. And I felt it would be inappropriate for me to make a decision for an incoming legislature when they can answer to the people for their salaries. And I say now, and I leave that backdrop, Mr. Speaker, because we're here now, and let's see how this vote holds up. Let's see, with this amendment proffered, the opportunity to set that example, and then move on to vote for this bill, if that's what some of our members wish to do. So this amendment gives way to the opportunity. It's a starting point, is what it is. Let's start here and then pass the rest if that's the vote of this body. So I rise in support of the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other senator wish to be heard on the Mccready Amendment, please? The Mccready Amendment. Do I understand there was an objection to the amendment?
And just a point of information, Mr. Speaker, the objection is because the amendment materially changes the original bill. It doesn't repeal all the raises, it just repeals it for senators. I'm trying to repeal all the raises, and that's why I object to the amendment.
There needs to be 3 calls for roll call. There's been 3 requests for roll call on the Mccready Amendment. Unfortunately, Senator Uggan had to run and will be right back. He just has to. Do you wish to hold?
Yes,
All right, we'll take a short recess. I have some order, please? Can we invite all the senators to come back into the hall, please? Thank you. There's been a request for roll call on the objection to Senator Mccready's amendment. All those in favor of the Mccready Amendment? Yes, it'll be roll call. The entire thing, in its entirety. There was an objection to its inclusion. If you're in favor of this amendment, vote aye.
Senator Tom Adda. No. Senator Tom Adda, nay. Senator Tony Adda. No. Senator Tony Adda, nay. Senator Uggan. Aye. Senator Uggan, nay. Vice Speaker Cruz.
Aye.
Vice Speaker Cruz, aye. Senator Duenas.
Aye.
Senator Duenas, aye. Senator Limtiaco. Senator Limtiaco, excused. Senator Mccready.
Yes.
Senator Mccready, aye. Senator Morrison.
Aye.
Senator Morrison, pass. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Munya Barnes, excused. Senator Respicio. Senator Respicio, aye. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez, aye. Senator Nicolas.
No.
Senator Nicolas, nay. Speaker Wampat. Speaker Wampat, excused. Senator Yamashita. Senator Yamashita, nay. Senator Morrison.
Aye.
Senator Morrison, aye.
The yeas had 6, the nays have 5. The amendment failed. I think we're back to the Your amendment failed, no? All right, we're now back to the main motion. Anyone wish to be heard on the main motion? Senator Duenas, did you wish to continue? No. All right. Senator Morrison, did you wish to speak on the main motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to point out, I just want to comment that, many years ago, I was part of an administration that went through this process with the Hay Group. And one of the things I want to point out is the government entered into this contract to do a comprehensive study that with all these positions throughout the government, to include classifieds, unclassifieds, to determine if those positions or the work that's being conducted are in line with the mission objectives of a department. Obviously, you saw a whole revamp of the pay scale system. I think we refer to that as the unified pay scale. I believe, Mr. Speaker, this was the first time in the history of Guam that we went through this process. So I just don't want this body to seem like we are pointing individuals out. This was done by experts. This was obviously not done by ourselves or the governor. It was not arbitrarily done where we sat in the House or the governor sat in one day and said, this is what my salary should be, or us senators sat together and said, this is what our salaries will be. I just want to clear up the air out there with the general public that we've paid professional people to do a comprehensive study of every position out there and make sure we get this once and for all structured and in line for what the work calls for and pay them for what they're worth. So let's not seem like we're pointing out individuals. I think we're painting the wrong perspective out there. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing a lot of hard work. And I think it was the right thing to do by, I believe there was the Camacho administration and the Cabo administration that took it further and continued the discussion of the study. But let's make that clear, Mr. Speaker, that we have professional people. I think what was good about that, once and for all, is it separated the politics. I believe the goal was to separate us coming here and going through this right now. Because we wanted to hand it to a group that knows how to evaluate, look at the work of all individuals in this government. And let's not put them in a class system as unclassified or classified. Just look at the job description, the title, and if it's falling in line with the mission and objectives, or they're going far and beyond what that job calls for. And I believe, as I participated in the process, along with other cabinet members, they were able to submit the information to this professional consultants to ensure this is what we do on a daily basis. This is what these folks do in their section on a daily basis. This is what this cabinet official does on a daily basis to meet the mission and objectives of that department. So let's clear the air, Mr. Speaker, and make that known to our public that this government contracted for a good sum of money professionals called the Hay Group to ensure that from every individual down in this government, this is what they should be paid. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Yamashita, you're recognized. Anybody after Senator Yamashita? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to speak on Bill number 435-32. Mr. Speaker, my position has been very consistent in all of the times, whether it was late at night, whether it was on a weekend, whether it was in the afternoon or in the morning, all the times that the competitive wage scale law, Hay Act, whatever we wanted to call it, or whatever it was called at those times, when it was raised, I have always been consistent about the need to invest in human capital. I've always been very consistent in knowing that we need to know what our performance standards are. The training support needs to be there. The evaluation systems need to be there, and the appropriate wages need to be there. As the most recent retiring senator took a seat, I was actually recalling when Governor Joseph Added did the first Hay Plan, and I was at the Guam Department of Education. And I remember the fallout then because I was then serving as the Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. And at that time, my lettering was higher than the other associates. And talk about political fallout. But the true nature of the Hay work was you sat and you talked about what is it you're doing? What is it that you're supposed to be doing? And what does that look like compared to locales across the nation that compared with our demographics? And so those pay scales started to fall out, and we started at DOE. And so that was the beginning, and so I know that all of these scales, you were the one who were continuously calling in DOA, Bureau Budget, BBMR. It wasn't always friendly. There were heated conversations, but those conversations needed to be had, and they were had. And there were agreements that we would go with our classified employees and the unclassified would be left out. And I objected to that. I understood, though, why. I listened to you, we wanted to make our classified whole first. We wanted to take care of the rank and file first. And we did. And so now we came back and we said, and now that the finances are a little bit more secure, now that range we might disagree to how secure it was, but we came to a point where now we can take care of our unclassified. And now I want to talk a little bit about the investment in human capital in the leadership ranks. Leadership just simply makes a difference. It just does. While somebody might say we'll always find someone who wants to be a director or a deputy, I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't know anybody, I've had enough people come up to me and say, I bet you're glad you lost. Who would ever want to be a senator? And they don't mean that in a mean spirit, but they mean that as somebody who sits and looks and watches and sees what we go through. And nobody knows what this is like until you walk in the shoes. And I certainly have a better understanding of what this is like. It can be a thankless job. Sometimes it is. But more often than not, it's not. But I want to say, because it's been stated a few times, not just tonight or this afternoon, but previously, that when you signed up for public service, when you want to be a public servant, then that's what you are. You're a servant. Well, I suggest that, yes, we are a servant to all families. Not all of us are servants to all families. I hope we get there one day. And I know you as Speaker, you as Vice Speaker are going to make sure that we all guide the deliberation better and better to that, because we need that leadership here. We really need it here. But it makes a difference in the whole contextual being of what this position is like. The incentive to be able to say, I can afford, as a single mom, to pay my bills and take care of my sons on this salary, even as I'm retired. Not everybody is. Not everybody has already served 20, 25 years somewhere else and brings to them that kind of backing. Not everybody has a private business, Mr. Speaker. And those who did worked hard and did it. But not all of us worked in that vein. Some of us became teachers. And our take-home pay was always $390 every 2 weeks. That's what it always was for a very long time. And so as things happened, as doors closed and windows of opportunities came, here I am. But Mr. Speaker, it is so important to make this position, this opportunity, viable for every single person on this island. Not just those who have good retirement plans, and not just those who have successful private businesses, but for every single person who wants to serve. You earn this money, you want to give it to somebody else, you want to donate it, you want to contribute, then that's your decision. But if there are those of us, and many of us are in this position, we have a lot of bills to pay. We have a lot of needs that we have to look forward. I say this over and over again. I know a lot of people tell me that's not their problem. But some of us have people with disabilities in our family. And certainly the government has not met standard there. So if there are people in these dilemmas, these situations, their life stories who want to serve but still need to make ends meet, this kind of incentive helps, Mr. Speaker. It just does. Needing a salary is a part of life. And it shouldn't be a reason for someone to say, I cannot afford to run. I cannot afford to win. it's always, I was honored to do the opening prayer at Thanksgiving. We had our Thanksgiving luncheon here a couple of weeks ago, and Speaker Wamp had asked me to do the opening prayer, and I was humbled to do that. This is a wonderful branch. Lots of goodness in this branch. Lots of heartfelt deliberation in this branch, as it should be. As it should be. I have never felt unsafe here. Never. Even when I was the only one disagreeing, I have never felt unsafe here. And that's the way it should be. But the doors to come in here, to raise money, to run, to win, to lose, need to be there for every single person on this island, not just the well-to-do and not just the ones who are taken care of, but every single one of us. And this pay issue helps. It just does. Now, I already know people are thinking how selfish of her, how wrong she is, but I'm speaking for those people who have thought about running but have figured out already they cannot afford it. And I'm saying to them, with this kind of legislation, you might be able to afford it. I also want to talk a little bit about where the monies, we've talked about tonight about where else these monies are needed. Yes, of course. People with disabilities, assisted living, our roads, our transit, every single issue, Mr. Speaker, that I've worked on in the last 4 years, we always need to do better. But I also suggest that there are already plans in place in just about everything. And unfortunately, it just takes time sometimes to realize those plans. The roads, the bridges, oh my gosh, when we first got in, I will always remember Senator Mana Silva Tyron, always, about her Molesto bills. And I'm sure you remember those bills. That was 4 years ago. And the heartache today of still saying that those knots are finally being untangled, finally, because we found the families, we got the agreements, and we're moving forward. But it just takes that kind of time. I'm not making excuses. What I am saying, for the record, is that there are plans in place to address a lot of these issues. So, investment in human capital. I know many of the directors, I know many of the deputy directors, and they live thankless jobs. Did they choose to accept the positions? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And they serve of honor. But it doesn't mean that they should have to serve of hardship. It doesn't mean that. It means that a government leader should be able to make ends meet comfortably. I should not have to suffer because I said, yes, I will, or yes, I shall. It certainly doesn't make us rich. I tell you that. And every single one of us have worked to get to where we are. This was never, ever, ever for me a handout. Never. I worked really hard. I worked really hard for my pay that I got these last 4 years. Always. I worked really hard. It wasn't good enough, obviously, but I worked really hard. And so I stand in full support of the kind of pay that was recommended by human resource professionals to say this is the kind of support that is needed to go to the unclassified leadership of this government, who delivers, who supports, who monitors, who says no and who says yes, and who helps us decide what is in the best interest of all families. It's something small. Do people get fired? Absolutely. Do people are told later, I'm here. I'm not going to see you in January. I am an example of that, and I know it. But what I am saying that this will serve as an incentive to help people who can say, I'll do that. I'll work for the families, for the government, for the people of Guam. So the human capital investment in what our human beings do and are needed to as support, I stand in full support of. And I think this is a small token of that statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Yamashita. Any other senator wish to be heard? I don't see any hands up. You may close, Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the last two retiring speakers referenced the Hay Plan and made the case that we didn't mark these things up. These were provided to us by human resource professionals. But in fact, I have in my hand here the 2010 Hay study that everybody's referencing. And I have in my hand here, Mr. Speaker, the amounts that were recommended by the Hay Group. And those amounts are lower than the amounts that this body approved and that was recommended by the Governor of Guam. The Hay Group recommended a new pay of $110,000 for the Governor of Guam. This body increases pay to $130,000. Lieutenant Governor of Guam, a new pay of $100,000. This body increased it to $110,000. If the cover is, this is what the professionals told us, the cover is blown. Mr. Speaker, I agree very much with the retiring speaker about human capital. And clearly, when there is a human capital question that needs to be answered in the private sector does internal studies to figure out what it needs in order to attract and retain. Now, the automatic answer that we tend to lean towards is increase in pay. But if you just go onto Yahoo and you go around and look, research job satisfaction, even just a general cursory Google search, you'll find that a lot of employees don't regard pay as the most important factor in the private sector. And the interesting thing is that when it came to the minimum wage, we had hearing after hearing, discussion after discussion about a $1 increase and cutting taxes to make it affordable, all kinds of discussions and involvements in the community. And the call for a study. Let's study the impact. But when it comes to this, when it comes to raising the salaries for elected leaders and appointed leaders, where's the call for the study? The public hearings we had in January resulted in us deferring these raises for elected and appointed officials, not talking about them at all during the campaign, and then all of a sudden it gets passed without even a public hearing. We belabor the point of the private sector, but for the government it's just okay. And we try to say that we're doing it because the study said so, but the study clearly said something different, Mr. Speaker. Now, this is a very, very difficult thing to do. Dozens of directors, their families, colleagues, and an administration that won another term, so we got 4 more years to work together, assuming I even win the next election. And it becomes very difficult, but sometimes the difficult is necessary. And sometimes we just got to create an opening. And the reason why I put all this work into this presentation and I took this step for us to have this dialogue is because I really believe in this body. I really believe in the members of this body. And I believe that when presented with the facts and with a compelling case, if we can just keep on doing that, we will eventually craft a body that responds to facts and merit and the quality of the case. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, I've done my very best to present a clear case that these raises are something that we should not be doing right now. Not only was the way that they were done something that really wrenches the trust of our people, but the fact that we did them when we have all of these other priorities, and it's not just a catchphrase, we have all these other priorities. I went through the list of these priorities. Those 2 very facts alone, Mr. Speaker, that I've done as good a job as I possibly can to try and make the point clear. I really hope that those 2 facts alone are enough for us to be able to reconsider. We must always, as leaders elected in this branch especially, be willing to reconsider all things at all times. And I really believe that the merits and the facts warrant a reconsideration at this point of the actions taken on November 21st. And I believe that this is a rare opportunity for us to really demonstrate to our constituents that we can reconsider, that we can vote on a measure when the merits indicate that it should be voted for. That we can, and I dare say this, say, you know what, we were wrong, but we're going to make it right. That's what I tell people all the time, Mr. Speaker, when they come up to me and they ask me to help them out with one thing or another. I say, I'm going to do everything I can to make it right. And I've made a lot of mistakes myself. I'm going to keep making them. but I'm always going to try to make it right. And with these facts and this information and the fact that we have all these priorities that we need to fund, we have an opportunity right now, as disjointed as it may seem, we have an opportunity to demonstrate to our people that we are brave enough to make it right. And this knows no party lines, Democrat or Republican. It knows only the bottom line. That's the dollars and cents, the $4 million more or less that this represents. I'd just like to read into the record a letter that we got from our acting governor with respect to this bill. This is from Ray Tenorio, acting governor. He writes, "Dear Acting Speaker, I'm writing to reiterate this administration's support of Public Law 32208, which would increase salaries for the governor and lieutenant governor, cabinet, attorney general, and senators. The unified pay scale was implemented in 1991 and was supposed to be updated every few years according to law. That didn't happen. What resulted was piecemeal legislation to increase salaries for specific groups, including teachers, nurses, and security officers. Other employees weren't so lucky. Occasionally, agencies had to ask for above-step pay because of the disparity that was created. Finally, the Camacho administration hired an independent professional firm, Hay Group Incorporated, to conduct a comprehensive review of GovGuam salaries. The Hay Group Incorporated completed the salary comparison and submitted their recommendations, which were the basis of the Competitive Wage Act of 2014. This administration has put a lot of effort into improving the island. We have paid tax refunds timely for 4 years, and 2 of those years we did it without borrowing. Also, each year we've been in office, we've gotten better at managing our finances, so the wait for tax refunds is getting shorter each year. With the improved finances and financial management, we're drawing more investors, creating a cycle of economic growth and continued improvement of our fiscal landscape. The governor and I strongly believe that good work should be rewarded, and the bottom line is the salaries are deserved. Senator Nicolas has said it himself in 2013 when defending his own salary increase, quote, "People get what they pay for, and with a low salary, the legislature will have a difficult time attracting quality leaders," end quote. It's time we stop playing politics. This was the reason we increased everyone else's salaries before elected officials, with the exception of the mayor's salaries. We need to recognize that even those public servants who are elected or who are appointed work hard and should be compensated accordingly. If Senator Nicolas doesn't believe he deserves his pay increase, I welcome him to do what we did in the first year of our administration and voluntarily take a pay cut. He can donate the difference, or he can rescind the legislative portion and leave the executive pay intact. Perhaps the latter is what the author of Bill 435-32 should introduce. Sincerely yours, Ray Tenorio, Acting Governor of Guam. I would have really liked to have had this letter written prior to the election. It might not have changed the outcome, but at least the people could have voted their conscience. Mr. Speaker, as I stated earlier, while the acting governor references the Competitive Wage Act, what they've actually introduced and what was passed into law for themselves is much higher than what the Hay Group recommended. The idea that paying tax refunds is a job well done, is a very arguable. I think it's business as usual. That's our job that we should have been doing and that we will continue to work towards doing. And the idea of quoting me based on what I said in the past, you can quote me all you want, and I'll take whatever hits I got to take, Mr. Speaker. Doing this again, like I said, is not easy. And, you can have all kinds of things, as I've learned just in the recent election, all kinds of things can happen. But in the end, we're the ones that have to live with the type of leaders that we are. And for me, if the price that I got to pay is just the constant spinning and twisting of things that have happened before in order to try and make me have less credibility for what I'm doing now, then so be it. Because I put myself at the mercy of the people. I put myself at the mercy of the people. And with this bill, I ask that all of us do the same. All of us do the same. Pass Bill 435-32, an act to stop salary increases for elected officials and cabinet members by repealing Public Law 32-208. put ourselves at the mercy of the people, inspire them by illustrating this very day that we can go back after being presented with the facts and do what we must do, and restore the trust and faith that our people have put in us when they voted in the recent general election. Because with the way things transpired on November 21st, Mr. Speaker, this is our one opportunity to make it right. And if we are unsuccessful, I will try again on the 33rd. So I ask this body, let's make it right today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The motion to send it down to the voting file. Any objection? Hearing none. Mr. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will you entertain a motion that we be able to vote on this bill without engrossment?
Hearing no objection. The chair has decided that we will vote on Bill 435 as introduced without engrossment. Madam Clerk.
Bill number 435-32 COR, introduced by Michael F. Houston Nicolas. An act to stop salary increases for elected officials and cabinet members by repealing Public Law 32-208.
Roll call.
Senator Tom Adda. Senator Tom Adda, nay. Senator Tony Adda. Senator Tony Adda, nay. Senator Uggan. Senator Uggan, nay. Vice Speaker Cruz.
Aye.
Vice Speaker Cruz, aye. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas, nay. Senator Limtiaco. Senator Limtiaco, excused. Senator Mccready. Senator Mccready, nay. Senator Morrison. Senator Morrison, nay. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Munya Barnes, excused. Senator Respicio. Senator Respicio, nay. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez, nay. Senator Nicolas. Senator Nicolas, aye. Speaker Wampat. Speaker Wampat, excused. Senator Yamashita. Senator Yamashita, nay.
Bill 435-32 received 2 aye votes, 9 nay votes. Bill 435 failed to pass. Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn this session subject to the call of the Speaker.
There being no objection, legislature is adjourned.